Hello everyone, Kokomojo here. I've been playing some Rogue again at the start of 9.2, and I'm thinking it could be my DPS main for the season. I had been thinking of playing Mage, but after the nerfs left Frost feeling unfun to me, I decided to try Rogue again, and have been having a blast. I've spent a bunch of time thinking of what things about Rogue could make it a good DPS main for me, and I figured I'd share my thoughts on the class to help others decide if it could be a good spec to play for them in 9.2. Jumping right in, let's talk about the 9.2 changes that Rogue's got. First of all, the tier sets that Sub-Rogue gets are looking to be really good. The 2-piece set bonus is going to give us Shadow Blades more often, which is just going to feed into getting more combo points and thus more damage, and cooldown reduction on Shadow Dance, which is going to feed into the tier set yet again. It's this kind of virtuous cycle that we'll end up getting. And then the 4-piece bonus, making our finishing moves have the chance to cast Shadow Strike on up to 5 enemies near us, is also a welcome change. This is going to have a chance to proc Shadow Blades via the 2-set bonus. It's going to be applying Find Weakness to everything to increase our damage, and it's going to end up being yet another strong source of combo points that we'll be able to spend to feed back into itself over again. Yet another virtuous cycle. I think these tier set bonuses are mostly going to be great in AoE, because you're going to be building up a ton of combo points in AoE, spending them to get the Shadow Strike proc from the 4-piece, and then this is going to feed back into the 2-set bonus. But this is also going to be pretty good in single target, since we'll be blasting Shadow Strikes into our enemies in single target as well, and so getting Shadow Blades periodically during any random Shadow Dance is going to be a welcome power increase. Double legendaries are also looking quite good for sub-rogues. We will be getting Obedience as a baseline Covenant legendary going into this patch after the 5th week, I think. And this is going to be making so our Flagellation gives us a versatility buff in addition to the haste buff. And it's also going to give us a lot of cooldown reduction. So we'll basically have a 1-minute flag cooldown. And in AoE, we can get that down to 30 or 40 seconds. I've been able to do pretty consistently. So we'll be able to be pressing flag for more funnel and just more overall damage as well, really often. And then there are a couple of clear choices, to me at least, for the second legendary. Finality is just going to be an overall damage gain. Basically every time we're doing a finisher, we'll be increasing the damage of our next finisher, and so in AoE especially, if we're pressing Black Powder very often, we'll be getting a huge damage boost on our Black Powder, in addition to the funnel damage from Obedience and Flag. Another interesting choice here could be Akaris SoulFragment. Basically, casting Shadow Strike will give us another Shadow Strike a couple of seconds later. So this is going to potentially feed into the 2 and 4 set bonuses. It's unclear exactly how this is going to interact with the 2 and 4 set bonuses, at least to me. I think we should keep an eye on the Rogue Discord, because there's a lot of really good Rogue players there that have been thinking about this for a long time and doing a lot of testing, so we should try to get information there. I'll have a link to that in the description. But there are a couple of ways that this could work out. The worst case scenario is there is no interaction whatsoever with the 2 and 4-piece bonuses, and I think that's okay. That makes this a weaker choice, and so I would probably run Finality if that were the case. But if there's any interaction at all with the 2 and 4-piece bonuses, then this could be a really great choice, because we'll have so much uptime on Shadow Blades. It's just going to be even more damage and even more combo points. Honestly, it might even be overkill. We might have more combo points than we can spend. We'll just have, we'll be overcapped on resources way more than we are now. And maybe that's not a good thing. I don't know. It's not entirely clear to me. Next, let's talk about the playstyle of rogues, at least in Mythic Plus. I don't really have any raid experience. There's other rogue gamers you can check out on YouTube that have a lot of raid experience, so I'm mostly going to talk about Mythic Plus. But in Mythic Plus, rogues have a really clear role of doing good, solid damage and having insane utility. On the damage front, there's 3 different ways that rogues can deal damage, and all of them are valuable and have their place. The first is in just pure AoE. We'll be pressing Shuriken Storm and Black Powder to do AoE damage, getting into Shadow Dance as often as possible, and pressing Symbols of Death as well. If you're talented into Shuriken Tornado, you want to be setting that up with your other cooldowns as well, and blasting some AoE. Rogues can do really strong, consistent AoE, but they don't really have that much burst AoE outside of Shuriken Tornado, and so they're not going to do as much AoE as other classes, but they can still do consistent AoE as long as things are stacked fairly well. The other niche that Rogue fits into is in single target damage. They're actually really strong in single target, so getting into Shadow Dance, doing the 2 Shadow Strikes into Eviscerate combo, making sure we're maintaining Rupture and Slice and Dice. This ends up being a really strong single target rotation. Of course, we'll also want to be using Flagellation when we get into our Shadow Dance as well. The combo here is have full combo points, press flag, and then start bombing finishers and Shadow Strikes into the enemy. This is going to give us even more single target damage, and the burst and haste buff we talked about before from Obedience and Flag in general. Rogues will often top the meters in single target encounters, at least in 9.15 throughout most of Season 2, but part of that was because we were playing with a lot of more AoE oriented specs like Frost Mage and Windwalker Monks that didn't really do a lot of single target damage. So if you play with some other really strong single target specs, then you may not top the meters, but you will definitely be competitive. The third and possibly most valuable damage profile that rogues can fill is funnel damage. This is where you are building resources from other mobs and then spending all of your resources that you're building onto one high HP mob that needs to die. Think of pulls like the Shards of Halakius and Halls of Atonement. They have way more HP than everything else around them, and they are basically a damage check in that if your healer runs out of healing cooldowns during a high fortified Halls of Atonement, then you're probably all going to die. So being able to build resources and spend it on damage on that one high HP mob to kill it faster is a really valuable form of damage. And our whole kit really feeds into this, right? We have Flag, which is going to be dealing extra damage to whatever it's on. If we're in AoE, we're building tons of combo points and we could be spending those on eviscerates. If you want to do Burst Funnel, you can press Shuriken Tornado and just be bombing 4 eviscerates every global for 4 seconds into one mob. And then outside of cooldowns, we'll just be pressing Shuriken Storm and then Eviscerate to continue to do funnel damage. Next up, let's talk about the utility that rogues bring. There's a lot to talk about here, actually. So first of all, we have Tricks of the Trade. This is going to be excellent for getting Snap Threat on the start of pulls for tanks. You will find that most of the time your tanks won't have any threat problems when you're putting tricks on them on cooldown, or at least at the very start of a pull. We have Shroud. This is going to enable some skips, and that's going to be able to let you skip by mobs that might otherwise take a lot of time or are very dangerous. Maybe they're inefficient count. We have a lot of good CC with Kidney Shot, Cheap Shot, Blind, and Sap. We can enable more skips with Sap, and then be able to be applying Kidney Shot, Cheap Shot, and Blind mid-pull to stop casts or CC mobs that we may not want to fight for whatever reason, if they're extra dangerous or something along those lines. We have a lot of immunities. These immunities can be used to just avoid damage while maximizing your own DPS, or to avoid mechanics altogether, like the Rite of Supremacy in Sanguine Depths. You can just press Cloak of Shadows and completely avoid the damage, which is going to save your healer a ton of time when they're healing up everyone else. They can just completely ignore you, and it also lets your teammates gather more orbs during that fight. Rogues have a very strong AoE damage reduction on a very short cooldown. This can be pressed on basically any AoE mechanic to make you extra tanky. If you have any concern about your healer being able to keep you alive, you can just press this and you'll almost certainly be okay. And then of course we have a lot of self-healing with File and Recuperate. File's on a very short cooldown, so you can press it basically every pull if you need to, and Recuperate is basically always healing you because we have, we're aiming to have 100% of time with Slice and Dice. Rogues also have tremendous mobility with Sprint and Shadow Step. You'll be able to just cross the playfield to get to some mob that needs a kick or needs some DPS, and you can do this where other melee might not be able to. They have to just hold W to get over there. That's what feels bad. We just get there immediately. Rogues do have a couple of clear weaknesses. The first one would be that I would say that their AoE damage is just lower than some other classes, so you just are unlikely to top the meters unless you're just pressing Black Powder. There's no way that you're going to be able to top the meters, so you have to be okay with that, and this is generally fine since you'll often want to be funneling anyway. It doesn't show up on details, but it is very valuable damage that actually does more than if you were to just press Black Powder. One of the other weaknesses is that you have to be in melee, and melee is really unforgiving in Shadowlands. There's always some puddle on the ground that's going to kill you, there's some frontal that's going to kill you, you have to deal with storming, you have to deal with sanguine, there's lots of things to dodge in this game. And sometimes maintaining melee uptime to maximize your DPS is really challenging. You may also be assigned a kick that you might just not be able to do safely, or you have to spend your cheat death on, because you can't get in there because the mob is standing in a puddle or something along those lines. So it's going to take a lot of practice, I think, to get good at this, but I think it can be really fun and rewarding if you can practice it. In terms of other specs, I can't really comment on these very much because I really just started playing Rogue again a couple of months ago, and I've only been playing Sub, so I don't have any direct experience with the other specs, but what I've heard is that Sin is crazy single target and will be really strong in Raid. There may even be some situations in Mythic Plus where you want to run Sin as well. And Outlaw, I've heard, might be the most intense and fun spec of all of the classes in the game due to proc reactions and the insanely high APM requirement. I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little intimidated to play Outlaw, but I definitely want to try it at some point. I've heard that it's maybe the most fun spec in the video game. So my final verdict, Rogues are extremely valuable in Mythic Plus due to their flexible damage profile and unparalleled utility. They do strong damage, they're going to be able to do clutch plays for your team and enable plays that would otherwise be impossible without a rogue. So I think if you're interested in playing a support-like DPS class that can still blast the meters, then Rogue could be a good choice for you. What do you think about Rogue going into 9.2? Let me know in the comments below or in the Discord. I've started to get into doing some 20s on my Rogue, so I'm still kind of a noob, but I am trying to learn and would love to do some VOD reviews for other people so I can learn from their gameplay, or have other people review my thoughts as well. So if either of these things interest you, then consider joining the Discord and checking out the Clips channel. We've got some people posting Resto Druid gameplay there, and I'll be posting some Rogue gameplay as well. Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, please consider leaving a like and subscribing, and good luck out there.